With Russians gaining an upper hand on the battlefield and Ukraine forced to retreat from many frontiers, some Western nations are urging a potentially dangerous course of action. They want Ukraine to be allowed to use long-range missiles to directly hit inside Russian territory. Moscow is warning that it will hit back hard if that happens. Is the war changing gears? Our next report tells you more.
In the face of the relentless Russian onslaught, the outnumbered and outgunned Ukrainian troops are retreating, giving up more villages. At least 7 people have been killed in the latest attack on the eastern Ukraine city of Kharkiv. Ukrainian President Zelensky again asserts that Russia is leveraging his country's lack of air defense systems to launch brutal strikes on frontline towns and cities. Beyond the battlefield, pressure is growing on US President Joe Biden to allow Ukraine to fire American missiles into Russian territory. The US House Speaker has told Voice of America that Ukraine needs to be able to fight back. He said the US micromanaging the Ukraine effort is not a good policy for Kyiv. Ukraine has appealed to the Biden administration to lift the ban. Kyiv is not alone in this demand. Lithuania, which is a NATO ally and shares a border with Russia, wants Ukraine to strike Russian territory, disrupt supply lines and neutralize enemy forces. Finland had said earlier that Ukraine can use weapons provided by Helsinki to hit targets on Russian soil. Remember, till now Western weapons have come with a condition. They should be used by Ukraine to hit Russian targets on its territory in defense. But the present change in tone could have wide-ranging ramifications. Earlier this month, UK virtually greenlit Kyiv to use its weapons as they deem fit. The big question is, if Ukraine is allowed to hit Russian targets, how will Moscow react? Kremlin warns it will strike British targets if British weapons are used by Ukraine on Russian territory. The signs are ominous. A small miscalculation can spark a wider conflict beyond the Ukraine borders. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
For more on this, we are being joined by Jonah Blank, who is the former foreign policy advisor to President Joe Biden. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Jonah, welcome back to WION. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson says that Ukraine should be able to fight the war as they see fit. What are your thoughts on that, and what could happen in your view?
Well, thank you for having me on. I think that there is enough international support for the idea of allowing Ukraine to use NATO weapons for attacks on Russian soil, that this is not really going to be likely to escalate the war. The UK, Lithuania, and Finland have already agreed to this type of dispensation, and all 3 of them are under much more direct threat from Vladimir Putin than the US is.
And that's very interesting. And how is it that we see a change of course now? Because the United States, notably the Biden administration, seemed to have always taken the least confrontational approach when it came to dealing with Ukraine, its policies on Ukraine and whatnot. What is the change?
Well, President Biden has been quite careful not to escalate the war, and rightly so. I mean, this is a dangerous situation. And let's be clear, that if the decision is taken to allow Ukraine to use US-sourced weapons for attacks on Russian soil, that would be a danger. But let's also look at the other side of the equation. Vladimir Putin, at least in my judgment, is unlikely to take a reckless action in the next half year, precisely because of the pending American election. Right now, Vladimir Putin has a 50% chance of seeing a US administration a year from now that will give him everything he wants. If Mr. Trump is elected, he's made pretty clear that he will withdraw US support for Ukraine and might even withdraw the US from NATO. If Vladimir Putin were to take reckless action before the election, that would likely hurt the cause of him getting Mr. Trump elected, which very much is in Putin's interest.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Jonah Blank. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon as we follow this story.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.